welcome everyone to episode 11 of On Hold. Just a little bit of housekeeping prior. Most people are good if you're out there using or watching this and using it for a rating or endorsement extension. If you can use your membership, the name on your membership as your screen name there. Alternatively, if you just want to, on the chat bar on the right hand side of the screen, if you just want to give me a private message that you're attending, I can record that. Like I said earlier, for those that weren't here, our attendance live is going down a little bit, but it looks like our hits on YouTube are going up. So people are watching this probably when they get home from work or at another time in the evening or something like that. Everyone's going to be muted to start off with. So if you've got a question, you can unmute yourself and just throw the question out there, or if you just want to use the chat bar, that'll work as well, and I can fire off to Brett when needed. Brett's going to talk about bringing your gear out of lockdown, and then at 4 o'clock, a couple of guys from Cyprus are coming on for a Q&A, have a bit of a chat about cypresses and stuff like that. And on that note, over to you, Brett.
Awesome. Well, thanks very much, Wade. G'day, guys. Thanks for stopping in. Everybody taking the time to come and check this out. Today's just basically, for a lot of people, will be a review. There might be something new in this for a few people. We're just going to talk about your equipment, not just your jumping equipment, but all the equipment that you've got. You know, gear's been stuck away in your gear bags or wherever it is that you keep it, hopefully in a dry place. So prior to getting out to the drop zone, we want you to do a few checks if you can prior to getting there so that you're ready to go once you get out there. Obviously, gear, if it's left, I mean, if it's in a warm, dry environment, it should be no deterioration of the equipment. It's only been just over 2 months, 2.5 months. The rig that I have here was last packed down at the Gyro Boogie at Maruya. So I've kept it like this just so that we can go through this process. If your gear has been left in a place where it has been damp or wet, you're going to have a few other issues that you're probably going to have to deal with. And you're probably going to want to talk a little bit more in depth about those kind of things a little bit later on. But those are things that maybe you want to throw up as in a question and answer more towards the end, or as we're going along. If there's something that you want to ask specifically, just jump in and ask me as we go. Don't wait till the end if it relates to what it is I'm talking about. All right. So like I said, we'll talk about the equipment. That'll be more in depth in a minute. But I just want to review the other stuff that we've got. Obviously, when we're jumping, it's not just our canopies and container and stuff. We've got other equipment that we need to be aware of. Obviously, our helmets, any warm weather gear now, buffs and things like that, you know, making sure that we've got those on with the new restrictions and stuff at drop zones. They're things that we need to think about before we get to the drop zone. Each person should be contacting the DZ before they get out there to find out what the requirements are. The APS has been putting some information out there for us to read, but it's always good to contact your local drop zone to find out. Every drop zone might have different requirements. Different states have different requirements as well. So first things first, go to your drop zone, talk to the CI, the DZSO, and get the information directly from them. So probably the biggest thing that most of us are going to be aware is buffs, and a lot of it's around full face helmets now. It's not mandatory to have a full face helmet, I know, but a lot of drop zones will be asking if you've got full face helmets to use them. Tandems, all the tandem instructors will be wearing full face helmets now, so that's something new for us as tandem masters to get used to as well. So relating to that, helmets, making sure that the helmets are in good condition, your visors are clear, wiped down and all that kind of stuff. Give them a wipe over, obviously, as part of the cleanliness practices that we're doing now. Maybe get some, disinfectant wipes, give your helmets and that a wipe over. And also think about your audible altimeters and your digital altimeters. The analog ones aren't a problem because they don't cut batteries. But now's a good time to check your batteries before you go out. Make sure the batteries are up to speed. If your batteries are showing low warnings, get the batteries replaced. The batteries, you can actually get the batteries from Battery World. All right. You often will have to order them though. So go and talk to the guys. You can take them out there. And it says on the back of the unit what type of batteries are required. All right. The CR2325s takes 2 in each one. They're anywhere from $6 to $8 for each battery. So go down to Battery World and get some of those and have them as spares or other battery locations. All right. So like I said, it says, and it's the same batteries for your Vizos and that as well. And I think for the Aries and the Dakunus, obviously those ones all just get charged up, but there's some that just require batteries. So check those. All right. Gloves into the cold season. A lot of people are jumping with gloves now. Again, I don't know if I'd be using gloves as far as a countermeasure for the COVID thing, but to have your gloves, a lot of people haven't jumped with gloves before. Be aware if you're a new jumper and you're going to go and jumping with gloves is another thing that you need to be aware of. So going through your handles checks, talking with your DZSO about what's it like to jump with gloves and getting used to it, because it's a different feeling altogether, you know. Not just in free fall or your emergency procedures, but even putting your hands into the toggles feels different when you've got gloves on. Jumpsuits, making sure they're not ratty and tatty. The biggest thing is there's nothing greater or I love more than to jump into an aircraft all squeezed in there with somebody with a jumpsuit that hasn't been washed in 2.5 months. Okay, so think about it. Go and have a sniff of your jumpsuit. Yeah, that one's all right. I'll take that one for a jump. Wash your jumpsuit before you get out to the drop zone. It might seem like a common, you know, something simple to think about, but a lot of people overlook it. Be a little bit socially aware of people and think about a little bit of hygiene and making sure that we're not stinking the plane up any more than we have to. Okay. Anybody got any questions on that? That's just the real basics. You know, those are the things that we're going to find in our gear bag. Your altimeters, make sure they're all working. That's probably the biggest thing. Don't turn up and your altimeters out and all that kind of stuff, or not working. The other thing that you're going to need to make sure that you've got before you turn up with your equipment is having been to your local pack array or rigger and had them do the compatibility inspection on your main canopy with the harness container that you've got. All right. So the requirement from the APF is to have documentation stating that the main's been inspected. All right. So on from downward trend, what we do is we put a packing card, a second packing card with the rig. Also, we fill out an equipment inspection certificate. And on the inspection certificate, which is the P3 form that we've modified, we've put a line in here which highlights that the canopy is compatible, and we sign that off. All right. So you're going to need to turn up with that at the drop zone to make sure that, make sure that you've got that, because your DZSO or the CI is not going to let you on the aircraft until they see those. For us, we just think the simplest way of doing it is having a second packing card. The inspection certificate is good, but obviously they can get lost over time. So having a second packing card, just put it in with the rig, is a lot easier. Also, if you've got multiple canopies, those canopies are all got to be given to the pack array or rigger to do the inspection. Even if they're all going into the same container, you have to have a few different packing cards. All right, we had that yesterday. Just a guy turned up with 2, so we do test packs on those mains to make sure that they're all compatible. All right, I hope everybody's had a quick read of those new regs before they get back out. All right. Gear, like I said before, gear being left packed for a while isn't a problem. It's not like the old days where we were really concerned, because the equipment's made of synthetic material, so it's not going to break down while it's kept out of sunlight. But what will happen if it's left for long periods of time is, especially with newer canopies, is the material starts to stick together. Okay, so openings can become very erratic and things like that. So right now, what we want to do is we want to get the gear out, the main out, inspect it, air it out, give it a chance to get the wrinkles out of it, and have a good look over things while we've got a chance before we get to the drop zone. Like I said, if it's been left in an environment where it's a little bit damp or mildewy, or if you've had some heavy rain, then maybe you've bumped into some mildew issues, and then you're going to have to go and see your rigger, and they'll talk to you about how to get rid of that, basically, because it's not something you want to leave on your equipment for too long. All right, so what we want to do first of all is we want to give the gear a general look over. All right, making sure that mildew is quite easy to see. Obviously, it looks like mold on bread. All right, if you've got no adverse wear and tear on the gear, nothing that looks out of sorts, but it's got a weird sort of coating on it, then you've probably got mildew on your rig. If you haven't got that, it's probably not a problem at all. All right. What we want to do then is we want to start to unpack the gear so that we can have a look over things as we go. And as we're doing it, have a look over it. This gives you a really good chance I mean, normally at the end of the day on a drop zone, we're quickly stuffing our gear into our bags and we're off. So this thing might not have been out and seen the light of day in 2.5 months. All right. So just slowly taking the main out, have a look. It gives you a chance to feel the pin tension as well. Have I packed it with a closing that's too long or too short? Does it come out with a nice amount of tension on the pin? Was the pilot chute folded up in a nice way? When I throw the pilot chute, does the pilot chute go to full extension when it's been thrown, or does it unpack itself as I'm pulling it out? Was it hard to pull out of the BOC? All right, so they're all good things to look at. And if you think, hey, look, this was a really untidy method when I went to pull it out of the BOC, the pilot chute kind of unpacked itself or was quite hard to pull, think about the method that was used. Ask some questions at the drop zone. What's a good method for packing the pilot chute? Okay, these are really good times now to start thinking about what's a better way of doing something. Ask that question, why? A lot of drop zones now are also requiring that your pilot chutes have a, if you have a throw-out pilot chute, that they have a tuck tab on the handle, all right? So take a look at that now. You don't necessarily have to change your pilot chute to a free fly handle. You can still have a hacky handle or a monkey fist handle, but what may need to be done is have a tab built onto it so that it can tuck in to the bridle cover and secure itself into the bottom of the rig, all right? A number of the drop zones around the southeast Queensland area here have mandated that, so it's a requirement before you're allowed to jump at their drop zones. All right. So once you've gone through the pilot chute, open the container up nice and carefully. Have a look. How does the bag lift out of the container? Nice and easy, or is it really, really hard? You have to shake the crap out of it to get it to lift out of the pack tray. All right. If you have to shake it really hard to get it out, chances are you might be oversizing. Okay, oversizing means that the canopy is too big for the container, and that maybe has been giving you line twists. Okay, if you've been getting line twists regularly, that can be a cause, just because it gets jammed in the container as it's coming out. All right, so lift your main out, then have a look at your closing loop. I would normally do this on the floor, and we'll move to the floor shortly, but it's going to be harder for me to talk to you guys on the floor. Okay, each rig manufacturer has a closing loop in the main pack tray, but they might put it in a different location. Some of them will have them in the grommet, in the bottom flap. Some of them will have them in the base of the pack tray. All right, have a look at your closing loop. The same old question, if in doubt, get it out. Okay, if it's looking frayed or it's got discoloration or it's just looking odd, there are $3, just put a new one in there. All right, all of this can be packed beautifully, and this is what will stop us from skydiving. All right, all of the closing loops should have a washer on them. All right, the washer should be sitting with a knot right at the base of it, and it should be pulled hard up against the grommet inside the retainer. Okay, the ones that are in your flaps are easy to get to. All right, all you have to do is, most of them will have a tab or a piece of elastic over them, so just push them out and have a look. Make sure that there's a grommet in there. Many of the ones that have been put in aftermarket might have a grommet that's too thin. Somebody might have grabbed a grommet from Bunnings or something and put a thin grommet in there, and you'll find the grommet actually starts to warp, and the knot in the closing loop will start to pull through the closing loop. All right, so good chance to have a look at that right now. Once you've had a look around the pack tray, have a look at the grommets. Again, if you've pushed a big main into a pack tray that's designed for a slightly smaller canopy, you might start to notice stress on the side flaps. Okay, where the grommet, at the base of the grommets, around the grommets, you can start to see that the material might be pulling out. All right, you want to get this repaired, because if it goes on for too long, what happens is the grommet starts to lift and it can become a snag hazard. All right, the stiffeners, which the grommets are pushed into, okay, on the side flaps, they often start to show a bit of wear, especially on the bridle side. So where your bridle comes up on the right base, so on the right side of the container, this flap here, where the bridle comes out, you'll often find that the binding tape along the edge of the material here gets worn from the bridle of the pilot chute coming out. Once that bridle is worn away, there's a piece of plastic stiffener under there. If that stiffener starts to stick out, it can actually cause a snag hazard. It can catch the pilot chute, or it can start to tear the flap. And the last thing you need is a pilot chute in tow. All right, so have a good look. If you're starting to see that the stitch line's starting to disappear, you can get it restitched. It's a simple job for your rigger to do. It's not a hard job, all right? But have a look at all of the grommets in the main pack tray. All right, make sure they're all seated nicely. The stiffeners aren't broken. Today, I did a replacement of a riser cover stiffener. It had just been packed incorrectly for a while and the riser cover stiffener broke, all right? The next thing that starts happening is it starts piercing through the material, all right? Right, from here, I'm gonna take the rig down onto the floor so that we can start to lay it out a little bit more. It might be a little bit easier for everybody to see. All right, sorry guys. Does anybody have any questions on anything that I've done so far? It's all pretty simple stuff. All right, somebody yell out if you can't see what I'm doing. Okay, now what we have is we've got a number of different types of bags on the market now. We've got bags that have rubber bands. We have bags that have a couple of rubber bands and then a line stow pouch. And then we have fully stowless bags as well. All right. So as we're taking the main out, we want to have a look. Is somebody live? All right. So just pulling on the bag, just see how the lines pay out. Okay. Do they jam? Do they line out, pay out freely? With rubber bands, there should be about 22 pounds of force. So it's around about 10 kgs. It should take about 10 kgs for these rubber bands to release. All right, that's not too bad. Also, have a look at the length of the stows that you've been installing. The length of your stows can take the opening from a nice controlled opening to an instant canopy to a long sniveler, okay? I like to use PD as a guide here because they've got some really good documentation up on their website. All right, they have videos on how to do some of this kind of thing. And they normally talk about 2.5 inches. All right? I like to say to people, if you use your thumb, unless you've got really short little stubby thumbs, the length of your thumb is a pretty good distance or length of a stow on your bag when you're stowing the lines. The other thing is, are the stows consistent? If you've got some stows that are only, 50 mils long and other ones that are 75 mils long, then you're going to expect inconsistent openings. Right. Take the canopy out of the bag and have a look at it. This one came out fairly easy. I'd say the canopy's done maybe 100 and 150 jumps. So it wasn't too stuck together. We've had canopies that have been left in bags for a couple of years, and we've taken them out and they're like rocks, they're rock solid. So especially if the canopies are newer, the material tends to stick to itself a little bit. All right. So once we've got the lines all paid out and the canopy's out and we're happy and we've had a good look at it, inspect the bag. All right. The bags get hammered during use. All right. Rubber bands should be replaced regularly. Don't wait for them to break. If you start to see, look, this rubber band here, it's been sitting in the same state for 2.5 months now. It's kind of all stretched out of shape. So the easiest thing to do is replace the rubber bands. They're not broken, but they're easy to replace. All right. So you should have a good, everybody, I guess, should be carding rubber bands, but most of us don't. Get together with a group of friends. A bag of these is, I think, about 25 to 30 bucks, and there's about 550 rubber bands in there. Right, so replace the rubber bands. If you're going to replace one, replace them, unless it's a new rubber band that you've just put on. Replace all of them. Now's a good time to do it so that you know that you're starting at square one, okay? So all the rubber bands on the bag can get, just pull, just either snap them off or be very, very careful, use some scissors and cut them away. But if you've put all new rubber bands on, make sure that they're all the same type of rubber band, all right? The only types of rubber bands that we recommend are the mil-spec ones. You have 2 different grades. for sport jumping, you've got your 2 by 3/8. Okay, so it's 2 inches by 3/8 of an inch wide, or your 1 1/4, or your 1 1/4 micro rubber band by 3/8. Okay, they're mil-spec rubber bands, so they've been produced for the military in the US. So they're basically, I guess you could say, certified. They're the industry standard. All right. So once you've replaced all of the rubber bands on your bag, we know exactly where we're at.
You mentioned buying them, Brett. Where do you buy them from? Can we get them from you?
You normally could. We've just run out because we haven't been storing a lot of stuff, but we are ordering some more in. Yeah, we can buy them from us. You can get them from Paragear. They're expensive to buy in small lots from overseas. Check at the drop zones as well. We should have stock in the next few weeks. We normally carry a few bags for a while, so normally around about 100 bags we'll get in. Yeah, ask around. If we haven't got any in the next few weeks, just ask around at the drop zones. There are different brands of rubber bands that are out there. Be wary, like I say, of rubber bands that somebody's just got from a random stationery shop, because you can create problems. Tension's not good, or they snap, or they just don't last very long. Right. Once you've replaced
Richard
the
here.
rubber...
Brad, sorry to interrupt. Richard here. Just you said remove the old rubber bands off the bag. You know how they get really pulled tight sometimes? They're really hard to get off. Any little trick on a good way to get them off?
Richard, you love to think outside the box. You've seen
I like to try and trick
before.
you, Brett, but I'm not going to manage it, am I?
A good one to do is, if you don't have scissors, and you've got to be very careful, and I'll use this on a new rubber band, just using your pull-up cord. Just feed your pull-up cord under the rubber band through the retainer, okay? And then what you can do is a gentle sawing action, okay? So if you saw on it, it'll actually just start to cut through the rubber band itself, and the rubber band will start to wear out, and it'll come off fairly easily. Just kind of break through at the bottom. All right, so just gently just sawing backwards and forwards on it.
Brilliant tip, thank you.
No worries, Richard. Good question. And like I said, at any point while we're doing this, if somebody's got a question about how you do something, please ask.
Can I throw in a tip while you're there? It's not a question.
Yeah, go ahead, Phil.
If Richard's talking about when you get the bungee off and it's still got a little stub of rubber on the piece of the bag you put the stow on, if you hold the left and right of the loop and pull the loop, it can just fire the elastic off sometimes.
Yep, you're right. Sometimes it will. Sometimes it won't. And if it won't, then use that little trick with the pull-up cord. That one works really well. But you are correct, Phil. Right, inspecting the grommets on the bag. Like I said, if you have a regular bag, which might have 3 or 4 grommets or 2 grommets, this is a 3-stow semi-stowless bag by UPT. All right, the grommets themselves are generally brass or nickel-plated brass. Some of them are even stainless steel. Okay, brass and nickel-plated brass grommets are a softer metal, so over time they can get dents and dings. Often you'll see lots of little chips in them, and you kind of wonder where those chips come from. Well, when your canopy leaves the bag, there's a stainless steel grommet in here that likes to connect with this very quickly as it leaves the bag. All right, that's often what will cause the nicks on there. And if you've ever wondered where those tiny little pinholes come from on the top surface of your canopy around the warning label here, exactly from that action, okay? Because the stainless steel grommet is inside the pack jobs, it is underneath the material here, and as it quickly leaves the bag, it connects for a fraction of a second with the grommet on the D bag, and that's enough to cause a tiny little pinprick hole, which over time will eventually open up. So hopefully that answers that weird, mysterious question of where do all these tiny little holes come from. All right, so once we've done an inspection on the grommets, what you might find as well, brass grommets and rubber band have a chemical reaction, all right? Brass will make the rubber go soft and tacky, all right? And you'll find often that the rubber bands have been left for a while are stuck to the grommet, all right? And it'll leave little bits on there even after you break the rubber band off. Again, using your trusty pull-up cord, you can put it through the grommet, and you can just gently wind it around on the inside of the grommet and wear away that rubber that's been left there. Okay? Right. Once you've done an inspection, yes.
I have a question on that.
Go ahead, Charles.
I have seen in the past as well when the rubbers go, when the elastic bands go all gooey, sometimes some of that is left on the lines. Does that damage the lines, or is there a way to remove that from the lines?
Jump your canopy. The slider coming down will wear it off. So I've not seen anything to state that there is a safe method or any real adverse effect from that rubber being on the line. I would have to research that one a little bit more, but I've never seen it cause any damage other than it leaves a horrible mark, which can tend to pick up dust and sand. And that would probably, in my opinion, would be the main cause of any damages, is the grit that it might pick up just because it's a little bit tacky. But I've actually done no research into what would be the cause. I did other research and came up with a stowless bag to get rid of the rubber band problem altogether. So I went in a completely different direction. So, and again, if you have bags that don't have grommets and rubber bands on them, then you will have bags that have stiffened flaps. Okay, so you have stowless or semi-stowless bags. Have a look at those flaps. Again, the same thing with the flaps on your container. They have plastic stiffener in them, okay? And if those stiffeners get bent out of shape, they can crack and break and start to pierce through the bag, all right? And some of the bags are closed with the stiffened flap, and if that stiffened flap is pierced through and catches, they may not open, all right? So really have a good look at the bag and understand. It's a chance to understand how do these bags work. So take some time and have a look at it. And each one of the manufacturers of those bags generally has instructions. And if you've got a bag that's an aftermarket bag, or you bought it secondhand and you never got the instructions, contact the manufacturer. They generally have instructions, and maybe you'll learn something about the bag. Like, oh, I was packing it upside down and I didn't even realize. All right. Okay, so once you've had a look at the bag, all right, we want to just do a quick inspection of the pilot chute and the pilot chute bridle. The part between the bag and the top of the canopy is the part that generally slides the most and causes the most wear on the bag and the canopy, all right? Some manufacturers have a hollow bridle where the kill line is actually inside, it's like a tube, and other manufacturers have a lanyard and the kill line exposed, okay? So there's a number of different types out there. Both are, I guess, as good as the other, but they both have benefits and flaws. The benefit for having a bridle like this, where it's compressible, when the pilot chute is compressed or cocked, the lower bridle compresses, and when it compresses, the outer material of the bridle covers the kill line. So at no point does that kill line rub against the bag or the canopy, so you don't get line burns, all right? The negative for it is you can't see that it's wearing, all right? Often you'll find that this type of kill line breaks because people can't see inside to see that the lower part of the bridle is actually starting to wear out. So that's the positive. As a negative for this side. The other type, the negative is that it comes in contact with material and with the bag, so you've got to be aware. And primarily, the kill line rubs against the lanyard that runs from the bag to the attachment point on the exposed type. So you've got to be in the habit of taking the twist out from the canopy to the bag. If you don't, you're chewing through the lower part of the bridle. All right, so take the twists out. Right, once you've checked and inspected that, look at where the highest wear point on your bridle is, and that's where it normally passes through the bag, all right? Because it's passing through a grommet, it's a pinch point. It kind of chokes off the bag a little bit, chokes off the bridle a little bit, sorry. So the bridle has to rub on all the sides as the kill line is collapsing, all right? So when it collapses, it's just burning a hole basically through it. And that's normal wear and tear. When do you stop? Well, when the bridle is actually starting to deteriorate to the point where it's spreading out across the bridle, because the kill line generally will run through the center of the bridle, you'll start to see little holes on either side of the bridle. I'll just bring this up so you can see. There's no holes in this one, but all right. So normally you in the center of the bridle, you'll start to see a hole develop right in the middle, in between the grommet there and the bridle. All right. That's quite normal wear and tear to see a little hole. But when you start to see it opening out, then you need to have it reinforced or replaced because the bridle itself is losing its integrity. There's 4 layers of material at this point. There's not just 2, there's 4. It's been reinforced, all right? So if it's worn through all 4 layers, then you've got some serious wear going on. And you'll normally see it on this type of bridle, okay, because people can't see, the user can't see that the finger trap normally, if you take the base of the kill line and you extract it from the bridle, there's a finger trap loop here. What normally happens is the very end of the finger trap, which you can actually start to see happening here. See this little lump here? This is where the finger trap actually ends, all right? And that starts to flare out and expose through the kill line itself. When that flares out, it creates a lump like a speed bump, and that speed bump going through the grommet chews the holes in the bridle, all right? And so when that's sticking out really badly, it's one going to cause the bridle to break, the kill line to break at that point because it's now opening the fibers of the kill line up, and it's also creating aggressive wear on the kill line, the outer bridle itself. Right, moving up the bridle from the bag to the pin. When you get to the pin, Vector have just redesigned their bridle so that they have their pin on the same side as the window so that you can see that the pilot chute's cocked. Most manufacturers still have it on the opposite side, all right? So have a look around that area. There should be some reinforcing, like a bar tack. It really shouldn't be one layer of material. If it's been manufactured incorrectly, there might be only one layer of that thin tape, okay? If it's got one layer of the thick type 4 square weave, now we're getting into something a little bit more complicated, but just ask some questions. If it's looking like it's got wear around the pinpoint, then ask the DZSO if it needs to be reinforced, or ask your packer A if it needs to be reinforced. Most of the pins are kept to the bridle or stitched to the bridle just with a couple of bar tacks, all right? So regularly check the bar tacks. If you start to see them, the thread unstitching, get them restitched, all right? The last thing you want is the bridle to lift off and the pin to stay in place, all right? Once we've done that, we move all the way up the bridle. Have a look. If you don't take the twists out of your bridle regularly, you'll start to notice grey wear and tear lines up and down the bridle. That's as the bridle's twisted and the pilot chute's collapsing during opening, the kill line's rubbing on the inside and it creates friction burns, okay? It's just like a line burn on the inside, and eventually those line burns or friction burns will start to open up the weave and the pilot chute bridle starts to come apart. Okay, once we get to the top of the bridle, stand gently on the bag, don't stomp on it, just straighten your bridle out. Now, what I normally see people do is grab hold of their handle on their pilot chute as hard as they can and then stretch and drag like they're trying to tow a truck, okay? By doing that, you stress the 2 bar tacks that hold the handle on. Most of them are only held on with 2 bar tacks, and all of the reinforcing tape around the top of the pilot chute. You'll start to see the weave in the material start to open at the corners of the reinforcing. It's because you're dragging on it all the time. People often say to me, oh man, I've only done 150 jumps on this pilot chute, and there's a lot of wear around the cap. If you're pulling on the pilot chute like that and stretching by the handle, then you are damaging your pilot chute, okay? The easiest way to do it, that I find, for me, is I will grab the kill line itself, just where it exits the bridle, stand on the bag, and I'll just gently pull on the kill line till it's extended, until I know that I've drawn all of the kill line into the bridle, and then I can let it go and watch it drop into the pilot chute. I can't pull too much kill line into the pilot chute. There's only a certain amount from the attachment of the canopy to the pilot chute. It should be the correct amount, okay? By looking into the pilot chute, we can see that the tape that goes from the reinforcing at the apex to the base is straight and the kill line is slack. That tells me that the geometry is correct. There's enough slack in the kill line. If you've drawn on the kill line and you let it go and the line is tight and the apex tape, I don't know if you, give me a thumbs up if you can actually see the apex tape in here. That's this white tape here. Can you see it? Okay. If the white tape in there is slack or got a bow in it like this and the kill line is straight, then your pilot chute kill line has shrunk and the pilot chute is not operating at 100%. It's not fully open, all right? So we need to have it so that extending the kill line, the pilot chute should sit with the tape straight and slack in the kill line. Does anybody have any questions on that? Does that make sense? Okay, right. How do I inspect the material? Most of the pilot chutes that I see are black. It's quite easy. We've got fluoro lights. We've got lights in here. If you're at the drop zone and you want to check your pilot chute, turn and face the sun, lift your pilot chute up towards it, and then look through the material of your pilot chute. All right. If you look through the material at a light behind it, you can see if there's any damage. The light will pass through the material a lot easier that way. All right. So using a backlight, basically, to have a look at the material, you can see stress marks. You can start to see where the material gets folded regularly. If it's folded the same way every time, the material kind of gets a crease line in it. Okay. And that'll show up as well. You'll start to see how the pilot chute or where the main parts of wear in your pilot chute are. Okay. If you find that your pilot chute kill line has been or has shrunk or is just even really fluffy and worn, like I said down at the bottom, it's not a very difficult job for your rigger to replace it. Just take it to the rig and he can replace it. All right. If you're getting long, slow openings, or you're finding that your pilot chute under canopy when you're flying is spinning, okay, it could mean either one, the long, slow openings is that your pilot chute kill line is too short, so your pilot chute is not doing its job 100%, so it's not lifting off very well, okay? And if your pilot chute is spinning under canopy, it means the kill line's probably too long and the pilot chute isn't collapsing all the way. To know if it's collapsing properly, just stand on the attachment at the canopy and just holding the outer bridle just nice and loosely in my hand, I just slide so that the pilot chute uncocks itself. When the pilot chute is uncocked or collapsed, you should see a minimal amount, and often you will see none of the pilot chute kill line. The kill line might be drawn all the way into the bridle. If you can see a minimal amount or none, then it's about right. If you're seeing about 50 mils to 70 mils, your pilot chute kill line's too long. And this is the reason why you see pilot chute spinning. Just a bit of air's getting in there and it's unbalancing the pilot chute, and that's why the pilot chute spins up and creates that twisting that is so annoying when you get down. Again, it's not a hard job for your rigger to correct that, all right? But there is a balance between too long and too short. All right, any questions on the pilot chute? Everybody's happy with that? Right, we're going to do an inspection.
Quick bag question before you move on. I missed asking a debag question.
Yep.
There's a little bit of wear on one of my grommets on my debag, on the material around it. So it looks like the one layer of the bag material's kind of peeled up and got a little bit fuzzy. You can't see through around the grommet at all. But what's a good point to know when it needs to be changed or repaired or replaced? Or
the grommet in your debag.
Yeah.
If you can see the material pulling out from around any grommet, you probably want to get you definitely want to get it replaced, because what happens once the material's gone from around the grommet, there's actually a gap left, okay? And that means that there's a snag hazard, like a line or something can get dragged in underneath that grommet and can get snagged into there. So on the bag flap, if the grommet's starting to pull out of the flaps and you can see fluffy bits sticking up all around the grommets, you want to get the grommets taken out, and a new piece of reinforcing needs to be stitched on the bag, and then new grommets pressed into it, Phil. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, there's no, I can't even get a fingernail under the grommet at the minute. It's not lifting out the material, but that's what I'm looking for, I guess. If I can start to snag anything, then
yeah. Once the material is pulled out from between the grommets, you got to think the grommet is two pieces of material pressed together, okay? And the material thickness is in between those two pieces. Once that material is gone from in between them, there's now a gap, and you'll be amazed at how lines can get into those gaps. Okay, it might only seem like 1 millimeter, but a line at high speed will get dragged in there in a heartbeat. Okay.
Okay.
Cool. All right. So doing an inspection on your main, before we inspect the main, we start at the bottom and we work our way up. So we start off with our risers, working up our risers. All right. Does everybody understand a 3-ring system? 1 ring through 1 ring through 1 ring. All right, that's the real basics of it. Okay, stop and study it. It's a good chance for you now to stop and have a look at how the 3-ring system works. All right, they're all pretty much the same, only slight modifications from manufacturer to manufacturer. Some have tighter tolerances than others. So some might be harder to assemble. Doesn't mean that they're wrong. It's just, again, it's just each manufacturer has a theory on how risers should work and how webbing stretches. Okay, if you're unsure, if the risers don't look right, there is some no-nos. Okay, like if the rings aren't touching, like if they're not touching each other, if they're hanging off the webbing, then you want to get your risers looked at because the geometry is wrong. All right, so but generally as long as each ring is touching each other when you hold it up, then the geometry generally, or not always, generally is pretty close or pretty good. All right. Okay. On our risers, we got our soft links and we have our guide ring. A lot of manufacturers build equipment with stainless steel in them now, but some still, even with stainless steel, will put cadmium plated rings on the risers. Okay. So the guide ring on the back of your riser where you pull your brake line through, if it's made of stainless steel, that ring won't rust. But if it's not made of stainless steel, over time, even if you don't jump near the ocean, eventually that ring starts to deteriorate. The plating on it, which is called cadmium, wears off. And as that wears off, rust forms because there's a chemical reaction between the steel and the oxygen in the air. All right. Once there's rust formed on that ring, it's starting to eat your brake line. So you'll notice the brake line changes color really quickly and it starts to fluff up really fast. The first thing you want to go and have a look at is the ring on the riser. All right. So this is an opportunity for you to have a look at the riser, the guide ring. Just twist it around and have a look. You might see that it's discolored on one side, and you'll go, "Oh, that's obviously where the brake line has been rubbing against the ring a lot." All right. If they are rusty, you need to get them replaced straight away. Okay, because it's just going to chew out your brake lines. All right. Any questions on risers? Would you like me to do a disassembly and a reassembly of the risers? Yes, no, maybe? Oh, one thing prior to me moving away, RSLs. Okay, on your rig, if you have an RSL or a skyhook or a mard, okay, it is attached, that RSL, skyhook or mard is attached by an RSL shackle, okay? The shackle should be attached to the ring on the riser, and it doesn't matter whether it's on the left or the right side, okay? We want to attach the ring to the ring from the rear of the riser. Okay, so we come through the riser and then we snap the shackle closed, all right? In this configuration, the shackle can't stay around the front of the 3-ring, all right? Does everybody see that? It wants to be pushed back by the ring on the riser and held back against the container. If we attach it the other way, it's not going to mean that the RSL is not going to work. All we've done, though, is we've placed the tab. All right, I'll just push this together. Okay, now we can see how it sits completely differently. Can everybody see that? See how it will swing freely in front of the riser, all right? This just creates the chance of a snag hazard. Okay, if we have a cutaway, and we're in an odd orientation or high spinning, the RSL can swing and sit because it will sit there like that. And if the 3-ring releases and grabs the shackle or the tab, we could inadvertently cause the 3-ring to jam up. All right, so it's a simple change. And you see, people often see me doing it at drop zones. I just walk up to people and say, excuse me, can I adjust your RSL? I disconnect it, and then I reconnect it. I always wait for, yeah, I don't mind, what are you doing? All right, and now that with it sat there, the RSL has no chance of coming around and impeding the 3-ring release. Okay? All right. Am I going to do a cutaway release for everybody? Does everybody understand how to, well, let's just treat it this way. I'm going to cut away the main canopy and clean the cables for you. So laying the main down, container down. Can everybody see the container down there on the floor? Is that all right? All right. I use a cleaning agent and then a lubricating agent. I use WD-40 to clean the cables, and then I'll use a dry silicone lubricant to lubricate the cables. People will often ask me why don't I just use the WD-40? WD-40 is a wet lubricant, and it tends to leave a bit more of a wet residue. So I use it. It's a great agent for cleaning off the cables and not damaging them. All right, but it's not. It's not a dry lubricant as such. It goes on really wet, and you've got to pull a lot of times with your cleaning cloth to remove any of the residue. All right, so spray the WD-40 on the rag, not onto the cables. You don't need to use a lot. So with the WD-40 on the rag, lay the cable into the spot where you sprayed the WD-40, and then pulling along the length of the cable a number of times. Right, then I'll find a drier spot or another rag. I'll often use, this rag I use regularly, if it starts to get a little bit dirty, I'll get a clean rag and I'll pull it dry with a cleaner rag. All right, once we've cleaned the cables, as you can see, there's no carbon buildup. Most of the black stuff that you see on the cutaway cables is from the housings themselves. Yeah, they do pick up dust and dirt from the environment around us, but the majority of the black carbon is from the housings themselves, because they're stainless steel compressible housings, and so they slide up and down on each other and they create carbon, and that's what the black residue is on the cables. All right, same process. Now spray the silicone onto the rag, a different rag. Lay the cables into the silicone and then just drag it along. All right, pull it through, and then again, just grabbing a drier part of the rag, I'll just pull it clean until I've left a nice clean, dry sensation on the cable. All right, you'll notice that when I pulled the cutaway cable out, I didn't move the risers. All right, that's why I laid it down specifically this way. I haven't disconnected the 3 rings. I've just removed the cutaway cable. When you remove the cutaway cable for your maintenance, maintenance isn't just cleaning the cable, it's also flexing the rings on the risers. All right, so what I want to do at this point is individually, first of all, disconnect the RSL on the side, whichever side it's attached to, taking the 3 ring off, and watch the 3 ring as you release it so that you can see that it was connected correctly and that it actually comes away nice and clean. If you have to really thoroughly pull on it to release it, it means you haven't been doing the maintenance regularly enough and the webbing has got a set in it, okay? These risers were cleaned 2.5 months ago, so they've sat for 2.5 months, and you can see how warped and twisted they've gotten, okay? And that just increases the pull force or the release force at a cutaway time, all right? What we're wanting to do is we just want to remove as much of that as possible. So take the webbing, flexing it open, all right? Start with the locking loop, which is just the white cable, having a look at it while we're doing the flexing of the material to make sure that there's no damage on the inside of the loop. Have a look around the grommet on the riser. Again, Phil, this is the same thing as the question you asked before. If you can see material pulling out from around the grommet in your riser at the front or at the back, it means that the riser has stretched. The hole that's cut in a riser for the grommet to pass through is round. If you can see the material popping out, it means the riser has stretched and elongated into an oval shape and is now losing its integrity. All right? It means that the grommet at that point is thinned, the riser at that point has started to thin out and stretch out of shape. All right? Each one of the webbings, the small ring, flexing the webbing backwards and forwards, and just gently twisting from side to side to remove any stiffness in the webbing. And this stiffness is often just humidity and the environment that we jump in, sand, grit, all just gets in there. Once you flex them and they're nice and straight, then we can reconnect it to the rig. But I won't reconnect it straight away because I need to do a line check prior to that because I've taken it away from the system. So I would then do the other side. Same process, having a look at the grommets, the loop, and flexing each one of the rings. What do we got, Wade? 5 minutes? All right, guys. So once we've flexed it all and we're happy that the risers are now back in shape, I'm going to do a 4-line check on this system. So I bring the risers down. I'm going to bring the rig up so that I can show you inserting the cutaway cable so you can see it more clearly. When we're inserting the cutaway cable with rigs that have a Collins lanyard system on them or a split RSL, you need to open the reserve flap because the RSL system is the housing is in 2 parts, so that the RSL, which has the Collins lanyard attached to it, can intercept the cutaway cable. So you have to open the flap, expose the Collins lanyard, pass the cutaway cable through the end of the Collins lanyard only, then back into the housing. Some rigs this is easier to do, other rigs it is harder to do. The Javelin, the original Javelin Odyssey system with this Collins lanyard is quite difficult to do. You must open the reserve flap and you need to move the reserve riser out of the way a little bit and get your fingers underneath. So often you'll need assistance. Even I find it difficult, but you've got to take your time. Once you've placed the cables back into the housings, make the Velcro, seating the cutaway handle up snug against the main lift web and up to the top of the pocket. So we have minimal amount of cable left exposed, all right? At this point, you can have a quick look and you can do a quick comparison. All right, holding the 2 ends of the housings together, the RSL attachment side, the side here, should be about 25 millimeters longer than the non-RSL side. 25 to 30 millimeters, that's the difference. Can everybody see that? All right, if your cutaway cables are not set up this way, with the RSL side longer, then you need to have the cables changed because they're out of specification. Right, once we have the cutaway cable set back in place, I'm going to use a weight If you don't have a weight, you have a friend, a boyfriend or a girlfriend handy, get them to stand on your risers for a second. Bring the slider down carefully. All right. I'm going to release the brake on the other side. Now I'm going to move you back a little bit, guys, just so you see what I'm about to do. Okay. Turn in slowly. Like that. Better. Right. What we're going to do is we're going to flake the canopy on its side. We're going to do a 4-line check. So grabbing both rear risers. Ooh, what have I done here? Okay. So I've got both rear risers in my right hand, both front risers in my left hand. So I have the nose of the canopy to my left, tail of canopy to my right. Shake the canopy out and lay it onto the ground. Okay. With the canopy on the ground, reach underneath, just straighten out the canopy material, grab the top surface, all the top surfaces just above the B lines or between the A and B lines and above the C lines or between the C and D lines. Roll in, flake out, roll in, flake out. Right, once we've got the canopy on its side, we can now do the 4-line check. Stand in between the B line on the stabilizer on the top and the C line. Follow them down, all the way down to the risers, pass it through the slider. The line should be the outside line on that riser, on the front riser, and it should also be the outside line on the rear riser. If not, like it is on this one, there was a twist from when I picked it up. All I have to do is twist the riser, and I found that I put a twist in. That's why whenever you disconnect your risers, always do this 4-line check. Once you check those lines, pick up the brake lines at the guide ring, pass them through the grommet on the slider, keeping the right brake line in the right hand, the left brake line in the left hand, walk back up to the canopy. All right, there's no twists. Right, I'm quickly going to flip the canopy over and do exactly the same check on the other side. Whenever you're flipping a canopy over from this mode, all you're going to do is slide the nose along the ground. All right, so pick the tail up, into the air, swing, and now we've just flaked it onto the other side. We're going to do exactly the same check, and that'll confirm whether we have a twist in the other riser or not. The B line and the C line on the stabilizer come down through the slider grommets. Should be the outside line on the front riser and the outside line on the rear riser. Pick up the brake lines, pass them back through the grommets, and then back up. I know that seems like a really simple thing. We go, oh man, everybody knows that. The number of people that I've asked to do that and have no idea what a 4-line check is or how to flake a canopy on its side still blows my mind. Does anybody have any questions on that so far? All right. When you've got the canopy like this, it's a good opportunity for you to have a look at the lines.
Hey, Brad.
Yes.
You can do the 4-line check also with the traditional pegging method as well. It's similar, but you can do it that way as well.
Yes, there's a number of ways of doing it. This is a really simple way when you're starting because you can see your A lines, your B lines, your C lines, and your D lines defined in a profile method, which makes it a lot easier for people like me. I seem to work that way, very visual. Easy for me to understand what lines I'm looking at. There are other methods. So, but I find this the most effective way of sorting out a canopy after it's been cut away as well. Right. once we've done the 4-line check and we're happy with where everything is, then we hook the 3 rings back up, which means you guys have to come with me quickly. All right. Everybody see? Taking the right riser, picking it straight up off the ground, laying it straight in. The main ring has 1 ring through it. Flip the middle ring, or the main ring on the riser goes through the main lift web ring or the main D ring. Then bring that up. Then the small ring on the riser passes through the middle ring. Flip that one up, and then the white loop must pass only through the small ring. Then through the grommet, and the riser, and then back out through the back of the riser. Can everybody see that? Is it okay? It's too hard to see. I apologise. I can't really come too far forward. Once you've got the locking loop through the riser, I'm just holding it with my forefinger so that it doesn't slip. Then I bring the end of the housing over. All right. Past the grommet, the locking loop must pass through the grommet in the end of the cutaway housing. If they don't pass through there and you just put the yellow cable straight through the loop, it'll release on opening. All right. Once you've got it there, passing the cable. Now, because of the split RSL, in older systems where we have a continuous cutaway housing, you could release the handle and pull the cables back until just enough is exposed that you can feed the end of the cutaway cable through the end of the locking loop. I find this method is probably a little bit more cumbersome, okay? But you've pushed it through there so that it's just passing through the locking loop. All right. With it like that, I have to set the other riser up before I can put the housing all the way back in, which gives me a chance of knocking this and it coming out again. So the method that I use, and I don't know if it's an approved method, but it is the method that I use. So I'll put the handle all the way into place and secure. With the housing, with the cable coming out through the end of the housing, holding the loop, placing the loop through the end of the housing. I'll then take the end of the cutaway cable and carefully, okay, this is the thing, carefully, passing it through the locking loop and making sure you don't pull the cutaway cable so that you kink it or pigtail it. Just gently ease it through until it becomes nice and straight all the way through the end of the locking loop. Now I can do the same thing with the other riser, and I'm not worried about this side falling out by moving the container a little bit. All right. So again, 1 ring with 1 ring. Okay. So the main ring, the middle ring, and the top ring. Now the white loop only passes through the top ring and through the riser. Trying to keep the locking loop nice and flat without any twists in it. All right, a half twist in the locking loop isn't a big deal, but we don't want to have lots of twists between it passing through the riser and going through the end of the housing. Okay. Then again, putting the end of the housing over the end of the locking loop. Cutaway cable carefully through the end of the loop. Now the 3 rings are connected. Once you've connected the 3 ring, inspect to make sure that you have only 1 ring through each ring. The white locking loop passes only through the top ring, through the riser, and through the end of the housing. And then do the same thing on the other side. 1 ring through 1 ring, loop through the top ring, through the riser, through the end of the housing. Once you've done that, then put the cables away. Only put the cables away once you've done the final inspection. All right, once that's done, reattach your RSL from behind the riser, snap it closed, and that is the 3-ring maintenance complete. The last point that you want to have a look at is, could we open the reserve flap to inspect that we've definitely only passed the cutaway cable through the end of the Collins lanyard, all right, and then back into the housing, that we haven't passed it over or under any other parts of material. Once you've done that, you can close the flap. Depending on the rig that you've got, the last check that I'd get you to do, unless you had some damage to your canopy or have had an inspection, which should have happened prior to you going back to the drop zone anyway, because when you do your compatibility, it needs to be inspected by the rigger or packer A, so they should have a look over this as well. All right, so a thorough canopy inspection should have been completed by somebody other than yourself. At this point, the last thing that we want to check is our AAD. Okay, pointless turning up at the drop zone without checking the AAD. Okay, turn your AAD on, cycle it. And it depends on where it is on the rig. On the Vector, it's up under the reserve flap, on the Javelin and Icon and other rigs in the back pad. All right, turn the AAD on, cycle it through, and then cycle it off. All right, turning the AAD on and turning it off on pretty much all AADs is the same method. All right, pushing, this is a vigil, so when the LED flashes, I push the button and it starts to go through its checks. Watch it. And you should do this on every time you turn your AAD on. Watch it go through the whole cycle. Wait till it gets to its final stage and it sets itself. Okay, with a vigil, it'll tell you what mode it's set in, whether it be tandem, pro, student, or extreme. With a Cypress, it'll count down to 0. Okay, with an M2, it'll either go through its check and end up with the arrow with the lines in it, or tell you what mode it's set in there. Okay, but always watch them. If they come up blank straight away, then the unit's found a fault and shut itself down. Okay. Does anybody have any questions? Let me now bring my face back up online. Oh, that's pretty much everything I have for everybody today. When you go back to your drop zone, like I said, have a chat with the guys, your DZSOs, the CIs, find out what the protocols are. As I said to some instructors the other day at a meeting that we had at Byron Bay, things have changed. Okay, we're in a different environment now. There's other cautions that, or other concerns that we didn't have before, as far as the social distancing, hand sanitizers and all those kind of things. And we want to help the drop zones out. We want to help them to keep continuing to operate. So we've got to be mindful of the rules. Please don't take any unnecessary risks or flaunt the rules. We've got to be quite cautious right now when we get back on the DZs so that we can maintain our ability to jump out of planes. If you've got any questions or you don't understand anything, ask your CI, your DZSO. And if you don't get the answers you want, call Charles. He knows everything. All right, guys. Well, thanks very much. I really appreciate everybody stopping in and watching what was going on. I hope you picked up something new. And if you do have questions, you're welcome to fire them through to me, either on my personal email or through the APF. And I'll be happy to answer them for you.
Thanks, Brett.
Thanks, Brett.
No worries, Robbo.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Brett.
Yeah, Jules.
Lots of great information there.